friends, I'm Melissa Wren, and I'm here with a little bit different topic today. I had a friend of mine reach out to me and tell me that sharing a few months ago when Kylie had her first seizure, sharing just a little bit about how she presented helped in the situation when her son had a seizure, and it was his first one that she was aware of. And so it got me thinking that yes, this is a little bit different topic. It's not nutrition, it's not something that will affect most people, but if it saves one person, if somebody tunes in and is in a situation or their own child suffers from a seizure, maybe they'll know kind of what to do and how it might present itself. So interestingly, I was doing a little bit of research. I am by no means an expert on seizures, so this is all just coming from personal experience. But what I found out after Kylies Seizure is epilepsy and seizures are far more common than I ever knew that they were. I found out that epilepsy is the fourth most common neurological disorder. So that follows right after migraines, strokes, and Alzheimer's. So I had no idea it was that common, and Dr. Pappas, the neurologist that we saw, told me that about one, and I found this on the internet as well, but about 1 in 100 people experience a seizure at some point in their life. And many never have another one, so a lot of times it's a one-time situation. That's not always the case, unfortunately, but it really is far more common than I ever knew. And it says so the 1 in 100, but it also says up to 4% of people will develop epilepsy at some point in their life. That's a lot of people. That's 4 people out of every 100. I'm kind of amazed by that. It says 1% of Americans have some form of epilepsy, so I'm assuming that is worldwide is the 4% stat. But it is more common than I really thought. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit about seizures, and hopefully I don't get emotional in this because this is still somewhat fresh. It was 5 months ago, actually tomorrow, that Kylie had her first seizure. And I'll mention a little bit more about what happened following that. But we had no idea. It was early in the morning. It was about 5:30. And Bill heard her making a gurgling sound, and he thought she was about to get sick. It was an odd sound, and he just by the grace of God, honestly, that he heard her. But he went and grabbed her out of bed, and hi Brandy. He went and grabbed her out of bed and took her to the bathroom thinking that she was about to get sick. She wasn't, but the next thing I know, I'm hearing this call that from Bill, that my name, and I knew it was something serious. And interestingly, Bill had just built some bunk beds for the kids. The night before that, Kylie was up in the top bunk. This night, the second night they were in the beds, they switched places, and Liam was on top and Kylie was on the bottom. And my first thought was somebody had fallen out of bed and was seriously hurt. So when I heard my name, I jumped out of bed. When I got to the bathroom where he was at with her, she was convulsing and moving all around, and he was holding her around the waist. We had no idea what was going on, and she had spit coming out of her mouth. So what progressed then very quickly was he had her on the floor. She stopped breathing. He yells at me to call 911. I'm calling 911, and that's something I hope none of you ever experience that. But she wasn't breathing, and so he was, by the time I had called 911 and was coming back to the bathroom from getting my phone, he was giving her breath. That's probably something I'll never forget. But anyway, the good news is she's fine. She came out of it. The ambulance came very quickly, and they said it was a grand mal seizure. And like I said, I worked in healthcare for 18 years in the hospital setting, and I honestly can say I don't think I'd ever seen anybody have a seizure. I'm sure nurses out there, I'm sure you've seen many people have them, especially in critical care or the emergency room, but it's not something I'd ever witnessed. And when it's your own child, it certainly is a very difficult thing to see happen. So like I said, what I thought is, if this ever happens to you, you're ever in a situation where somebody's having a seizure, you just kind of know the basics of what to do and what might happen. I had no clue that the breathing ceases in most grand mal situations, because what's happening is so much is going on. There's so much electrical activity going on in the brain that the body just kind of has to shut itself, some of its systems down very temporarily to recover. And so I didn't know that breathing could cease. And so we were panicked, of course, and in a situation where you don't know what's happening, you do what you know what to do. So anyway, what followed then after her seizure was the next morning. Of course, I was in a panic, and she and Liam slept with me for like 2 weeks straight. And let me tell you, I didn't get any sleep those 2 weeks. It was pretty miserable. But I was in such a high state. I was in such a panic over it because, I mean, I got to tell you, having kids for this many years, you don't expect it just out of the blue while they're asleep. My door was closed. Her door is usually closed. It wasn't, because we had just built those beds, and for some reason the door was partially open. But anyway, the whole situation was just kind of a blessing that we heard it. But you don't expect things like that to happen. So anyway, after that, the next morning while she was in bed with me, I heard the gurgling sound. And Liam's first comment after this was taking place, it was a very short seizure. And then she had another one later that morning, like not too long later, of the same thing, where it just lasted just a few seconds. But Liam said, oh, now finally somebody else has heard it. So what we don't know is, could this have been going on for a while and we just didn't know about it? We don't know, and we still don't know what the cause was, because we went through the EEG, which showed seizure activity. We did the MRI. The MRI came back fine, so there's no known cause. There's no brain tumors or anything unusual in her brain, which we're extremely thankful for. So we may never know the cause, but it was scary. And I can tell you, as a parent, it's just not something, like I said, that you ever expect to happen, but I'd like you to kind of know what to do. So typical causes of seizures, I was looking this up, illness, usually fever, like febrile seizures, brain damage, like if there's been some brain damage, maybe preemie or something like that, where there's something in the brain that isn't formed correctly, brain development problems in general. Here's something, I had a lot of people reach out to me after Kylies Seizure and mention that their husbands or their spouse or brothers or sisters had a seizure at some point in their life, and their physicians wondered if it may be growth related. Well, interestingly, like I said, we don't know the cause of Kylies, but when I look back at how much she had grown, probably the month to 2 months prior to her seizure, she'd had a huge growth pattern. Her pants suddenly were, high rises, or high waters, whatever you call them. But I just wonder if there isn't some relationship with growth and, the unusual electrical, I can't even talk today, electrical activity in the brain. But it says up to 50% of the time the cause is unknown. So types of seizures, Kylie had a grand mal. It's also called a tonic-clonic, where there's convulsions. There also are absence seizures, where people are awake, they're present, they're not really aware of what's going on around them. It's like they kind of tune out for a moment, or sometimes up to a couple minutes. I had no idea that those existed. There's atonic, myoclonic, simple partial, and complex partial. I'm still learning more about all those. I think Kylie may have been having some other types of seizures, because those 2 weeks that she slept with me, she was doing some of this picking stuff, like in her sleep, and that's also a type of seizure. So anyway, what we're thankful for is this was on a Tuesday morning that she had her seizure. By Thursday, we had the EEG. We knew there was seizure activity, and we got her started on meds. Did I want her to be on medication for this? Absolutely not. I was praying it would never happen again, but it did. And I got to tell you, after being through a situation like that, you will do anything in your power to stop that from happening again. You just will. So, we've chosen medication, and she seems to be tolerating it well. My prayer is God's healed her and that she doesn't have any seizures ever again. But we don't know, and we're just going to trust that God's going to be with us no matter what. Hi, Connie. So anyway, here's the situation. So what was happening with Kylie, there was a gurgling sound, and I'm telling you, once you hear it, you'll never forget it. Like I said, the stopping the breathing can happen during a seizure. What they say is to time the seizure, so if it's greater than 5 minutes, you should be calling 911. I'll be honest, if it's your own kid, and you see him having a seizure and it's the first time, you're going to call 911. It's just, you don't know what else to do. You feel very helpless. But the situation, they say, really is you just need to protect them from injury. So when the second morning, when she had those very small ones, my thought was to call 911. However, Bill was there. She was with me in bed. When I heard the gurgling sound, I immediately called for him. He came. Again, it was like early in the morning, right before you wake, which some people have seizures in their sleep. Again, never thought about it. I always thought if you had a grand mal seizure, it would be during your waking hours. You just fall and have one. I just assumed that's the way it was. So hers was during sleep. And so, I was talking to Kylie and Liam's kindergarten teacher, who she has experience with epilepsy, and she was calling it like a sleep transition seizure. And I've heard that, like when I've looked at, I don't know exactly what it would be called, but I have looked on the internet, and a lot of people have said that their kids only had seizures during sleep. So it is something that happens. We have a baby monitor now so that I can hear. Hopefully I would hear it. I think I would, even in my sleep. But it just makes me feel a little bit more assured that we could get to her if she had one. So again, protect from injury is the main thing. Turn them on their side, not just turn their head, but actually turn their body. Hi, Amy. Amy's a nurse, so you've probably witnessed seizures before or had experience with them. But you turn them on their side. If they've got glasses on, take glasses off. If they've got tight clothing around their neck, you're going to want to loosen that. The main thing is don't be putting anything in their mouth. Let the seizure ride out. Again, if it's more than 5 minutes, you definitely want to call 911. And I just honestly still, if I saw Kylie having a seizure, it probably would be my first instinct to call 911, unless it was like 30 seconds or so. Which in that situation on that second day when she had those little mini ones, it was about 15 to 30 seconds and she was done. And interestingly, they say when you wake from a seizure, you don't really know what happened, which she didn't with the Grand Mal. She had no idea. She was like, why are all these paramedics and firemen in our house? Because there was quite a few. And but when she woke up from those little mini ones, she said she could recall hearing herself making that gurgling sound, and she kind of was aware of it. So kind of an odd thing, but she kind of knows now and is aware of what was happening in those moments. So I don't know if it was just kind of like an aftershock almost of the Grand Mal, because it was 24 hours later. But again, we haven't seen any other seizure activity other than maybe that picking that I saw that first week or so when she was started on meds during her sleep. But I haven't seen any like Grand Mal type seizures. Bathing and swimming. So that was something, I gotta say, Kylie had gotten to the age where she could be in the bathtub and I'd feel fine with her doing that. Okay, I don't do that anymore. I'm always like, within the room or close by when she's taking a bath. And I probably will until I know that she's off meds and seizure free for, I think they say like 2 years. I probably will be like on the alert with everything. Okay, that's just a mama's heart. It just is. I can't imagine doing anything other than that. Swimming, definitely something we're going to have to be very cautious with. I actually, when I got back from Punta Cana, I was looking at the coach page. There was another wave of coaches that went after Ellen and I were there. And there was a girl coach in her 20s, I believe they said, maybe late 20s, who had a seizure on the shark excursion. So she was in the water with the sharks. She had a first time Grand Mal seizure. Hi, Amber. Luckily, I think there was a couple nurses on the excursion with her, so they got her to the hospital immediately, took care of her and all that. But can you imagine somebody having a seizure in the water? So that's something I'm going to have to be on the alert about, is definitely watching her anytime she's in a pool. Wearing bike helmets, highly recommended, of course, for anybody. But if you've had seizures, you definitely want to avoid any type of head injury that could happen. I was telling the person that reached out to me that I was very thankful that she told me about it, that her son has had a seizure and she kind of knew what to do in that situation. And I told her, I said, it's kind of nice to connect with somebody else that's been there, because I said, you kind of experience, I would call it almost a post-traumatic stress disorder after something like that, because I'm finally getting to the point where I can sleep well and I don't wake up in a panic. But there was quite a few times where I was waking up kind of in a little bit of a panic, like, did I hear something? And I'd go check on her, and I'm kind of working past that, and I'm praying a lot and trusting in God, but there is a little bit of stress that goes with something like that, because it's like you don't expect something like that, and their sleep especially, so it's really hard. I said I kind of dread, especially the first month or so, I really dreaded bedtime. Like I said, I'm kind of working through it, and I'm getting past that. But it is hard when your kids had something happen to them. I'm sorry, but I just think that you are going to tend to be more worried about them than you ever have been before. So I really feel for, gosh, any mom that's had kids with health problems or had preemies or just any of those things, because we made it 6 and 8 years without really anything major happening, no broken bones, no hospital visits, all those things that you just take for granted as a parent when you have healthy kids. So I'm just very thankful. I gotta say my outlook on life is totally different these last 5 months. Just being more thankful for everybody that reached out to me. I couldn't even get over just the outpouring of love and prayers and personal messages that people sent, and just reach out to say, hey, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for Kylie. It meant so much. So I just have to say that there's blessings in your storms of life, and I've seen that with this. Every day when they wake up, I thank God that they're alive and that they're with me. Hi, Shannon. And it just makes you look at life a little bit differently. So I got to thank God for that maybe I just was on a track where I needed kind of a reminding of that. And I'm not saying that that's why that happened, but I see the beauty in the storm. So anyway, if you're ever somewhere where you see somebody having a seizure, it's not something to panic over, but it's something just to be aware of and kind of know what to do. I mean, it's super simple, turning them on their side and just letting them, getting help, but letting them let the seizure ride out. And that's so hard because you just want to fix things. So Amber, you said you understand that feeling. Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that. It was brought in by a fever. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So every time you run a fever, my anxiety spikes. Oh my gosh, that's so true, because Kylie really hasn't had like any. She has had, I think, a little bit of a fever, but nothing really high. Maybe once it was in like the 102 range. But of course, I was like treating her with meds, which then you have to be careful for. Hi, Gwen. You have to be careful with some of the meds, because some meds can cause more likelihood of seizure. Did you know that? Like antihistamines and different things like that. So there's just a lot of things that I've had to think about. There's a lot of questions I have. We go back for a follow-up, a 6-month follow-up, the first week in June, and I've got some questions coming up, like with puberty coming soon, just different things that I want to know, like if the situation presents itself, what do you do? And there's a lot of stuff online, but I want to know from the neurologist, because he's fantastic. Dr. Pappas is definitely James Pappas at Peyton Manning. He is wonderful, and I know just looking online, there's great resources out there. But I think when you get a chance to talk to somebody that is their job, it makes you feel a little bit more assured. His biggest thing, he told me, Kylie is a normal kid. He didn't want her feeling like she couldn't do things. I even called about, like, could she go to a 3D movie? Well, she didn't have the light sensitivity like some kids do. But it still worried me. Like when we went on a field trip and she watched a 3D movie, I was like constantly checking her. I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? And she was, but you got to think about that. Or, laser lights type, like laser tag place. Liam went to a couple birthday parties there. I'm like, I was just kind of nervous just walking her in that place, because some things like that can trigger seizures. So just something to know if your child's had one. Maybe do a little bit of research on some of these things. If you've never seen it happen again, that's wonderful. But yeah, there are some medications out there that can cause problems. Now, having a fever in general, they said, though, can cause a seizure. So it's like, which do you worry about? Well, I don't think Kylie's really had to do antihistamines, but that is something you might want to think about. And maybe I can get some information about that and share like what they told me. I wrote it down, like what kinds of things to be more cautious with. But just like a Motrin or something like that is fine. But when you get into certain types of things in medications, they can interfere with the seizure medication. So just something to be on the lookout for. So that's kind of what I wanted to let you guys know, just kind of our situation that we've been through, that I just thank you guys all for being so supportive during it. and just so that you have a little awareness for yourself. So next couple of days, what I'm going to be talking about is party planning. So totally lighter topic, and I won't cry, but I want to talk about like one of my favorite things to do, which is party planning. Every year for the kids, I enjoy doing that. So I just wanted to talk about some tips to help you do that. So I'll be back on tomorrow talking on that subject, and then on Saturday is party day, so I'll probably have just a couple last minute, hi Lisa, couple last minute tips for that. So I will chat with you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.